So how many discus or angelfish should you buy? That's a question that many of us have faced throughout our hobbies. So it's always a challenge. Should you buy a large group, 10, 15 fish, or should you buy a smaller group? In some cases, these fish are quite expensive. If we're talking about Altum angelfish, if we're talking about wild caught discus, or even some expensive tank bred strains of discus. So it's also a budgetary consideration that we have to keep in mind when we think about the number of fish that we need to buy. So very often aquatic retailers or experts will tell you to buy as many as possible. So they will tell you to buy at least 10 discus fish or 10 angelfish, because both discus and angels are shoaling fish. So they're not schooling fish like cardinal tetra. They don't swim in schools all the time, although very often on YouTube we see videos of Altum angels or discus swimming in schools, but they do it very occasionally when they're stressed out, when something happens in their tank, when there are different environmental conditions which force them to form a school. But other than that, they're shoaling fish, so they find comfort in numbers, particularly when they're young, and especially it refers to discus. They will feed better if they are in a group of 6 or 10 or even more fish. There will be more competition, and they are competitive feeders. So if there's more discus, they will feed better and they will feed more actively. But once they mature, both discus and angelfish, things start to change. Most likely, if you have a group of fish, maybe if you have like 6 or 10 fish, you're going to have 1 or 2 pairs. So what happens when a pair is formed? They will try to carve out territories within your tank, and they will try to control and defend those territories from all other similarly looking fish. Well, in case of domestic discus, some pairs are more aggressive than others, and some pairs will try to chase all other discus or angelfish or similarly shaped fish such as severums from their territory. Others will be kind of more relaxed about it, and unless they're spawning, unless they're laying eggs, they will probably allow other fish to swim on their territories. With wild discus, they will almost never allow all other similarly shaped fish on their territories. The same goes with angelfish. All wild types of angelfish and Altum angelfish, if they have a territory, they will protect it, and they will not let any other similarly shaped fish on its territory, on their territory. So you might have a group of 10 or 12 angelfish and a pair. This pair will control most likely half of your tank, unless you have like a 3 meter or 10 feet long tank. They will try to control about 3 feet long territory of your tank. The rest of the fish will have to be will have to exist in the rest of the tank. This is what I have here right now. So I have a pair of Altum angels. They're standing over there, and they control about 80% of this tank. This is a 4 feet tank. They control about 3 feet, about 90 centimeters. And the rest of the fish, 3 other Altums and juvenile Monocapur angel, they literally exist in this territory. Whenever they venture outside of this territory, they will be attacked and they will be beaten and they will be forced back into this territory. Well, obviously this is a temporary situation, and I will be moving this pair possibly tomorrow to another tank, the breeding tank, where they spend most of the time. I put them here just from time to time so they could rest from breeding, and they could eat a bit more than they would do in the spawning tank. So I do plan to move them to a larger spawning tank in near future, so they're not going to live here. And this is just a example that I'm showing you what might happen if you have a pair and if you have a group of angelfish or discus fish in your tank. I had a very similar situation with wild discus before. I had a pair of brown discus, and they controlled approximately similarly sized territory, and the rest of the discus were stuck to this one little corner and they couldn't come out of it. So I have here 3 large Altums. they're not paired, I don't know what sex they are. Even if I had here 10 large adult Altoms, they would still be stuck to this territory. The pair will not allow them to swim into their territory. So if you're buying a group of Altom angels, you are quite likely to end up in a similar situation. Well, some people will say, yeah, if you have a larger group like 15 or 20 fish, of course the pair cannot harass all of them. They will be able to stand their own ground. But I would say definitely not. In my own experience, that would never happen, because this group of fish, they are individual fish. They are not pairs, so they act as individuals. They don't act as a pair. The pair usually attacks, they attack together, and they select individual fish from this group of fish, and they pick them up one by one. They don't attack all of them at the same time, so they select individual fish, they chase them, they attack them, and they work in group, they work in pair. The same thing I can say about the rest of the fish. Whenever you might have like 20 of them in here, but they will still be individual fish, and they will be attacked by the pair individually. So in my experience, it doesn't make sense to have a large group unless you have a really huge tank, and if you have a pair, this pair will have sufficient territory to control, and the rest of the fish will have enough space to swim around as well. So if you're not planning to breed this fish, if you just want to have a group of them and you don't need a pair, it's safer to buy smaller numbers. Or you can buy, for example, a group of 5 Discus or 5 Altom angelfish, and later on, like 2 or 3 months later, maybe 5 months later, you can buy another similarly sized group. These fish will be of different age, and by the time they reach the same age, there might be a pair formed, but there will be less chances for a pair to form if they're of different age, different size, different dynamics will take place. So if you don't plan to breed this fish, you can go for a smaller group. Then there will be less chances that you will have a pair, because the group is smaller. In some cases, if you have a group, let's say of 6 or 7 fish, and there is no pair, there will still be a pecking order. There will be a dominant individual, and there will be a few subdominant individuals, and then there will be a few individuals that will be harassed by all of these dominant and subdominant individuals, and they will always be stressed out. They will not have sufficient access to food, and they will be hiding most of the time. So one of the things that a lot of people will say how to deal with this situation is to have a larger group. So you have like 15 fish, there's no pair in there, and there is a pecking order. There is 1 or 2 dominant fish and a few subdominant fish, and the rest will be harassed most of the time. So again, I don't think this works. If you have a smaller group, let's say 5 or 6 Discus or 5 or 6 angelfish, there is no pair. There will be 1 dominant individual, most likely, a couple of subdominant individuals, and maybe 1 individual that will be harassed by the rest of the fish. So I think it's better to have just 1 fish that's being harassed and doesn't have sufficient access to food and is likely to get stunted, rather than 5 or 6 of such fish if you have a larger group. Again, it depends on your tank size. If you have a really large tank, the hierarchies and the pecking order will be slightly different because there will be more territory. Again, let's get back to the question of territories. There are 2 ways to lesser aggression in your fish tank. Again, I'm talking about a situation when there is no breeding pair, where you just have a group of these fish. One of the ways is to create more territories, to add more decoration, to break the lines of sight. And the other way is to remove all the decoration to prevent creation of any territories. So, for example, if you create more territories, each individual fish can find their own space within those territories. For example, I have here quite a lot of driftwood, and some of the fish can spend time on this side, on that side, and here, so they can create their individual territories. and the pecking order will be more or less distributed alongside these territories, and even the weakest fish can find some place if there are sufficient number of hiding places and territories. The other way around is to remove everything from your tank, all sorts of driftwood, plants, anything that could be used to mark the territories. In that case, there will be no territories. And if you don't have a breeding pair, then the rest of the fish will have no opportunities to split the territories, to create the territories, and they're likely to be more peaceful in an empty tank. Yes, I know it doesn't look very appealing to have an empty tank. You can certainly still have gravel on the bottom that doesn't affect territorial creations, and you can have some floating plants and things like that, but anything that stays on the substrate, like plants growing on the substrate, driftwood, large pieces of rocks, they're likely to be used as boundaries to create territories around them. So if you want to lessen aggression in a group, you can remove all of these things, and then there will be less aggression. So the conclusion of this video: if you want to breed this fish, you can go for a larger group, and you can get a pair or two pairs. If you don't have plans to breed this fish and you just want to have aesthetically looking fish of swimming together harmoniously, you could go for a smaller group, and later on you could add more individuals. They will be of different age. There might be some harassment because they might be of different size, but again, that depends. So in any case, I hope this video was useful. Leave your comments in the comment section, and see you soon.